Hello, I hope that this word today is going to bring encouragement to your heart as we look at the goal, the purpose, and the destiny of God for our lives. Peter, in 1 Peter, the book that he wrote, the letter to the believers, is talking about how a believer will find himself in a fiery trial. But then he tells us to keep our eyes on God. Why does God let us go through a fiery trial? So that we might learn what it's like to be holy like he is holy, not lacking in anything. So ultimately, what is that going to look like? Well, it all makes sense when we think about the big picture. To be like God is to learn how to love. If you think about it, a lot of trials come from just human interactions. Or if the trial that you're going through, maybe it's a rough diagnosis that you receive from the doctor or a financial situation. Sometimes the trial is not personal. And yet as you're walking through it in this life, people say things they shouldn't have said, accidental things happen. Maybe people don't step up the way they need to, and we find that our area and our ability to love is really challenged. When all is said and done, what does God want me to learn how to do? How to love and how to love well. So I pray today, and that's, I'm sure, going to be your prayer as well. Lord, as I'm going through this difficult circumstance, help me to forget about myself where it's not all about me. And Lord, really teach me how to love. Because here's what Peter says in 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 22. Since you have purified yourselves by obedience to the truth, for sincere mutual love, love one another intensely from a pure heart. Here he's saying to us that we have received the purity of Jesus Christ. So when I first gave my life to Christ, there's so much that needs to change. Well, even now, there's still a lot that needs to change. But when I first came to know him, there was so much more that needed to change. But I received the purity of Christ, the gift of purity. I received a pure heart. So then what God does in my life is he wants the purity of the gift of Jesus to be in line with how my body acts, how I respond, the words that I use, how I treat others. When the outside man lines up with the purity of my heart that Jesus gave me, then I come into that wholeness or holiness of God. And he tells us, learn to love with the word there, intensely. Wow, not just learn how to love, but to love intensely. Which reminds me of the times that I flippantly say, oh, I love that brother, or I love that sister. But Peter doesn't let us off the hook that easy. He says, but do you love them intensely? Because the way Jesus loves every human being is intensely. He lays down his life for them. My prayer for you and my prayer for me. God, help me not just to verbalize my love for others. Help me not just to have received a pure heart and not learned any lesson. Help me, Lord, to love in this world and to love intensely the way you love. To see people the way you see them.